Welcome to Dave Freeman, a guide at Ely Outfitting Company. Ely Outfitting Company provides a wide range of services from trip planning to fully outfitted and guided tours. Dave and his wife Amy also run the Wilderness Classroom, which is dedicated to introducing kids to some of the world's wildest locations through virtual school assemblies. They have also written two books, A Year in the Wilderness and North American Odyssey, 12,000 miles across the continent by kayak, canoe, and dog sled. We welcome Dave to the Figure It Out podcast, which is hosted by me, Maxine. And we are basically on a journey to try to figure out what the heck I want to do with my life through interviewing people that I find cool and fun. So, Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you are. I want to give people a sense of where in the world is Dave right now?
Well, at the moment, I am on a 35-foot sailboat in Rio Dulce, which is in Guatemala. So we're up a river, about 15 miles from the Caribbean, and yeah, so that's where I am at the moment.
I, Dave, I feel like I kind of struck gold in reaching out to you. I really thought that I was going to get a guide, maybe a younger kid who had like done this for a summer or two or something like that. And when you reached out to me, I was like, oh, cool, like someone wants to be interviewed. That's great. And the more I dug into it, I was like, whoa, I hit a pot of gold here. For someone who has really like built their own career, does a lot of different things. You seem like you have many different passions, but they seem like they are kind of all wilderness or outdoor focused. When people ask you what you do for a living, what do you even say? What's your general answer?
Usually I say I'm a wilderness guide or an outdoor educator or something like that. Um, but yeah, Amy and I wear a lot of different hats, and but for the sort of the common thread, I guess, no matter where we go, sometimes we're off exploring for a year or more at a time, but we always basically end up back in northeastern Minnesota in the Boundary Waters. And so for the last 25, 30 years, that's really been home base. And then when we're there, I'm leading trips in the Boundary Waters, whether it's dog sledding trips in the winter, or mostly now I'm doing mostly canoe trips in the summer. And so, yeah, usually I just say I'm a wilderness guide. And then if they want to dig deeper, then I can talk about the other things that I do as well.
Yeah, well let's dig deeper here. So wilderness guide through the Boundary Waters, summer and winter. What else is on Dave's to-do list?
Um, well, so for a long time, Amy and I have also run the Wilderness Classroom, which is a nonprofit organization. And over the last, say, 20 years, it's sort of ebbed and flowed. Sometimes it's been like our main focus that we've worked, basically full time doing that. And other times it's just sort of a volunteer thing that we run and we do a little bit. But the goal of the Wilderness Classroom is basically just to introduce K-12 students. Mostly we work with elementary and middle school students to sort of introduce them to wild places. So for many years, we would go off on multi-month or multi-year expeditions, um, from the Amazon to the Arctic. And we would beam into schools and do live, basically, we would, be doing podcasts or blog posts or live chats and things like that with the students from the Amazon rainforest. Say, um, and now what we're doing with that is basically when we're on our sailboat, which is sort of from now until April, when we
Mhm.
go back to the Boundary Waters. We're on the sailboat, and so we still work with schools. So like next Friday, um, we're working with a school from California, and their students are doing a unit on rainforests. And so we're doing like a live streaming video program with their school to teach them about rainforests because we've spent, I mean, in total, we've probably spent a year and a half
Wow.
on canoeing expeditions in the Amazon. And so we have lots of photos and sounds and videos. And We have a poison blow dart gun, and all paddles from the carved out of special types of wood from the rainforest and all sorts of stuff. So we basically beam into the schools and we do programs about oceans, about rainforests, about many different topics.
That's awesome. Where did this love stem from? I guess like did you grow up in Ely and so Boundary Waters was always kind of home to you, or like where did this love of the wilderness and kind of teaching other people about it start?
I did not. Amy and I both, we grew up in cities. So Amy grew up in St.
Oh,
Paul. I grew up outside of Chicago. Um, but really, for both of us, we started going to the Boundary Waters when we were kids with our families. And so I was in middle school the first time I went on a canoe trip in the Boundary Waters. Basically, I was just after that, it was like anyone with the driver's license. I was trying to convince them to drive back up and go on a canoe trip. And then I started working for Sawbill Outfitters when I was 17, when I was like a junior in high school, and um, yeah, just kept going up. And then after college, I moved up full time and met Amy, and um, so yeah, really, it was. I think the Boundary Waters was really my introduction to wilderness. And once I was introduced to that, I just I needed to figure out a way that my life revolved around it. And the more time I spent and the more skills I gathered, the sort of the more ambitious projects I guess we took on, and we figured out ways to teach people, whether it's physically taking them out in the wilderness like I do all summer, which I love, or whether it's working with schools, going in and doing like live programs in schools, or other things like that through the wilderness classroom. But it's just, yeah, I don't know, we just sort of made it up as we went along.
yeah, and that raises a great question. Where did you go to college and what for? How do you get a degree in wilderness?
Well, now there's a lot. It was starting to be available when I was in college, but I didn't really know about it. But now there are a lot more sort of outdoor education programs and outdoor leadership programs. I studied biology and anthropology.
Okay.
Um, Amy studied art and psychology, so we didn't, neither of us really, um, our formal training wasn't in a specific subject. Now there's a lot of, I looking back, I didn't know about some of these more specific programs, and now we've been able to work with some colleges that have these outdoor education programs, and I'm like, man, I wish I knew this was available when I was in school. But no, we just sort of got regular liberal arts degrees, and then it was really more on the job training. Uh, my first real guiding experience, I mean, I did a little bit of guiding of canoe trips, but not very much. After I graduated from college, I got a job leading dog sledding trips for
Oh,
Wintergreen Dog Sled Lodge, which is right outside of Ely. And that was really my first major exposure to sort of leading wilderness trips. Um, and that was really fun. I did that off and on for about 20 years.
oh,
Just, you know, because I mean, you're dealing with people, and you got, say 6 people, and you've got 15 or 20 sled dogs, and and another co-guide that you're working with, and it might be 25 below zero or whatever. And so there's all sorts of stuff, that lots of variables, and it's really fun and challenging. And yeah, it was really, that I learned a lot from that. And
mhm.
um, and that was really how we got my start in leading wilderness trips. And then from there, Jason, the owner of Ely Outfitting Company, he actually worked there for a few winters as he was starting his
Hmm.
Ely Outfitting Company. And so we got to know each other that way. And then Amy and I started working with him, guiding in the summer. Um, and so, yeah, just evolved from there.
Yeah, I can't imagine getting so lucky to have you as a guide on a Boundary Waters trip. I'm sure those um, those canoers walk away very happy. I can't imagine, like being with someone as experienced as you are. I've only been to the Boundary Waters with like an unguided, like by myself or like with my own group of people. So I'm sure it's a very different experience to get to go with a guide to point out all the things that you miss, even though you're canoeing. You're going relatively slow. I'm sure there's still so much to miss out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's really good things about going with a guide and going on your own, I think, but um I think there can be some benefits, especially for people that are new to the boundary waters and they're still sort of figuring everything out. It can sort of the learning curve can be
Yeah.
um a lot easier if if you have someone that can sort of help manage things and make give pointers and teach you along the way. And then there's fishing and you know wildlife identification and history and all sorts of stuff. I mean, I think probably when you think of a guide, you probably think of someone that's like in their 20s or something.
Right.
But most of the guides are like, I would say, between like 30 30 and 50 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of the guides have, and some of them are older. Um, but a lot of the guides, at least the ones that work for Ely Outfitting Company, have been doing it. They have like decades and decades of experience, um, which I think is good. I mean, not that a younger person can't do it. A lot of times if people want to start leading trips, one way to get into it is working for um a summer camp
Hmm.
or like scouts or something like that. Quite a few people start with that and they start leading trips with youth, and then a lot of people do that for a couple of years and then they
Hmm.
move on and go and do something totally different.
Hmm.
But if you want to become sort of be a wilderness guide sort of past your 20s or something like that,
Hmm.
often people gain experience in programs like that, and then they'll move into working for a place like Ely Outfitting Company or Wintergreen Dog Sled Lodge or something like that once they've gained some experience.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about that, like the seasonality of the type of work that is Boundary Waters. Like, are these older people that is this their career? Are they teachers in the off season? Are they going to dog sledding in the off season? Like, what is that kind of split? Are they retired and just like this is just kind of their fun job? Like, what does that split kind of look like of the other people that you work with?
Yeah, it's really varied. So, I mean, it's all of what you just said. So, there are a few of the guides that are older and that are retired, and a lot of those guides, they lead a few trips per summer, and they're sort of one of the nice things about Ely Outfitting Company is Jason has developed this a a wide roster, right? So I mean, like there's a lot of people to choose from, and so someone signs up and they want to do this trip, and it's like, oh, this would be perfect, for this person.
Hmm.
And so there, and then there are some teachers or people that have like different jobs in the winter.
Hmm.
So have sort of another job that's seasonal, whether that's oh, there's a helicopter flying overhead. Yeah, that's the rich Guatemalans have private helicopters.
Yeah.
Um, oh yeah, so some do like Amy and I did, where they do like dog sledding or something like that in the
Hmm.
winter, and then canoeing in the summer. Um, some of them maybe go someplace else, like they go well, that's sort of what Amy and I are doing now, right? We're on our sailboat for the winter,
Hmm.
and go back to Ely for the summer. So, but you know, some people might go someplace else and guide a different type of trip in a different location or something like
Sure.
that, or ski hill out west or something, and then they come back. Um, but most of the guides that do it like long term, they end up finding seasonal work, like two things that they go back and forth and do, whether it's like they work at the school in the winter and they guide in the summer, or whether they guide dog sledding trips in the winter and
Hmm.
canoe trips in the summer, or work at you know, some other sort of seasonal job. But that's part of living in Ely, is a lot of there is a lot of seasonality in a lot of the jobs, so people end up often having two or three jobs that they do.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And talk me through like your summer schedule. Like, is this like you're out for 10 days or how, I mean, I don't know. All the trips I've been on have been about 5 or 6 days. So 5 or 6 days, maybe you come back. Are you back for 5 or 6 days? Are you back for 2 days? Are you back for 5 hours? Like, what does that schedule look like for you in the summer?
All Yeah, all of the above. So so I guess like if you average it out, I am generally out in the woods, um, probably 20 to 24 days out of a month all
Okay.
summer.
All right.
So sometimes I'm out and I come back. Like normal would be I go out for 5 or 6 days. I come back for 1 or 2 days. I go out for another, 7 days or whatever. Um, Come back 1 or 2 days off. Sometimes it's like I come out of the woods and I meet my
Right
next
back
group
in.
3 hours later, and the next morning go back out for another 7 days. Or sometimes I'll have 3 or 4 days off in a row because
Hmm.
of how the schedule, like it's like there isn't, if there's say 3 days between trips, like I'm not going to squeeze another one in the middle, right? So
Right.
occasionally I'll have like a longer break or whatever, but usually it's like I'm out for about 6 days, I'm back for a day or maybe two, and then I go out again.
Hmm.
But I'm a private contractor, so I can, if I don't want to, if I want to take a week off, like I just have to say, nope, I don't want to do this one, find somebody else. But
Yeah.
I generally, it's like 4 months, right? So I like being out in the woods as much as I can. So I'm usually out for, I don't know, 85 days or 90 days or something
Yeah.
over the course of the summer. So I just assume be out there.
Yeah. I mean, I would assume in your line of work that's probably not uncommon. I can't imagine people are like, yeah, I'll take a month off in the middle just to not be out there unless they want to go on their own trip, which I imagine is probably, common enough to say, I actually want a week off so I can be out in the boundary waters but not guide, not have to be responsible for a group.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean that would be pretty, like, oh, I'm gonna go on a personal trip, so we
Hmm.
block off this week or whatever. But yeah, for the most part, it's because it's a brief season. I think people generally work as much as they can.
Hmm.
Um, and because even if uh, you have a different job. So let's say like when we were leading dog sledding trips. So in the summer, most of the trips are like late middle to late end of May through September, end of September, early October, and then the dog sledding trip season is like December through March.
Hmm.
Um, so you really have a maybe 6 weeks or something like that in the fall and 6 weeks in the spring between those seasons, and so um, you're working a lot during the summer and the winter, but in those shoulder seasons there you have bigger breaks, so it's sort of like that. Those are the times when you recharge and you go on a personal trip or go visit
Hmm.
family or whatever, because during those seasons you're really really busy.
Yeah. Do you feel like because you started this at kind of a young age that you are well acclimated to that cycle of work, or do you think it's something you grew into? Or do you think it's something you were born with, where you're just like, yeah, like I just, this seems to work really well for me and my thing, or is it just a consequence of the job where you're just like, yeah, this is just what I have to do, so I never thought about doing anything else?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have never had, this is what I've always done. I
Yeah.
think that, I think it suits, I think it suits me well, you
Hmm.
know. I really like it because I don't get tired of something, right? Like I do something 100% for say 4 months,
Hmm.
and then I'm on to something else, right?
Right.
Um, and then by the time I come back to that same thing again, I've been doing other things for months or maybe even years, and
Hmm.
so it's new again. So for me that really works, but I mean we're a little more settled now, but like for decades, we were always bouncing around, moving from place to place, and all of our, like, so for a lot of people that would be hard, is not being like having a set routine and like
Hmm.
and knowing like this month I'm going to make this amount of money, and like very steady, and so it's worked for us, but it I think for some people it would be harder, and I think it is something you can also just like you will get used to over
Hmm.
time. Um, but yeah, I think without trying it, you're not going to know if it's going to work for you or not.
Yeah, I would imagine that budgeting your cash flow probably at some points has been very difficult to I mean, I guess the good thing about being in the boundary waters is that you're not spending money while you're making money. You're not spending $10 on Starbucks at Knife Lake. Like you're not really spending any money while you're out there, so it's probably pretty relatively easy to save. But I can imagine that budgeting for a year would be very difficult to be like, okay, well, where are we going to be? Where are we going to be this winter? What are we going to do this winter? What are we going to, all those different variables that you have to work within.
Yeah, yeah, because you have to realize that, like, oh yeah, I'm working a whole bunch right now and I'm making all this money, but then there's going to be other times where you're not bringing in any money or very little, right? So you have
Hmm.
to really, you have to be mindful of that because it's a little different than just like, oh, yep, I'm working 40 hours a week at, X dollars an hour or
Hmm.
whatever, and it's going to be like a steady thing.
Right.
Um, but uh, yeah, I mean, I think our sort of mantra has always been, um, to just like keep our overhead low, I mean, we've always only had one car, and it's like, you know, old. Like our current car is like almost 20 years old, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like we live like super simply, we
Hmm.
live in a we live in a yurt, and we live on an old 30-year-old sailboat, right? So um and for many years we lived even like simpler than that. So
Hmm.
um yeah, just keeping everything low so you don't have like big monthly car payments or big expenses, like, because tho- those really limit your choices, because then you can't decide, oh, there's this really cool opportunity over here, but like I'm not going to be making very much money for these months, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to, you
To
know
chase that. Yeah.
car payment that I have, or whatever, or like the nice apartment that I've rented or whatever, right? So
Hmm.
we always tried to keep our expenses low enough that we can say yes when something comes along, because we don't have to worry about like a whole bunch of overhead that we have to take care of while we're
Hmm.
like paddling in the Amazon or spending a year in the Boundary Waters or whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Did you, I mean, it sounds like you have basically forged this love for the wilderness and done whatever you have had to do to make enough money to live. So you can just keep doing that. So you can spend as much time in the wilderness as possible, while bringing it to other people in whatever way that might be. Did you have a person or a thing that like you felt like you could model your life after to be like, oh, this person is 50 years ahead of me and they've been able to make a career out of wilderness. I can do that for myself. Or did you really feel like you were like, I don't know what I'm doing or if anyone's ever done this before, but I'm just going to keep figuring it out?
Well, I think a little of both. I mean, like as far as like the guiding, that's something that has a long history. And so definitely that's something that I definitely had mentors for, like Paul Shirky, who I worked for leading dog sleighing trips for a long time.
Hmm.
And and there are a bunch of like Steve Eisenminger, who's been a guide in the Boundary Waters for a long time, uh, and others that yeah, that for the guiding part, for the wilderness classroom part, that was a little more just like we're just figuring it out, um and just sort of trying to figure out what worked, how we could engage with the students. And so that's been more of a sort of a forging our own path.
Hmm.
Some ways it's been nice to have a combination of both because, um, uh, yeah, I really like the being able to go back and forth and work with people in person in the wilderness, taking a family or a group of friends out and introducing them to my favorite place, um, and then also working with kids and that you know and sort of sparking their interest. It's I like that the difference, the contrast.
Hmm. Was there a specific point that Wilderness Classroom was born that you were like, oh, this like I want to bring this to kids and this is how I think we can do it? How did that what's the inception story there?
Yeah, so I guess it so in the winter of 2001, I traveled across the Boundary Waters from Grand Portage on Lake Superior, along through the Boundary Waters along the border, to over to Voyageurs National Park. I think it was like 250 miles or something. And it was my it was I borrowed a sled dog from a friend, and we had two little sleds, and I pulled one and he pulled one. And so I knew I wanted to. I thought maybe I'd do some presentations afterwards or something. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do, but right before I left, the this little satellite, like handheld satellite phone, came available, and it the ability to send like tiny, like literally like postage stamp size pictures and like little blocks of text became available. And so I ended up, a friend from college built me this little blog before a blog was even a thing, and I had 5 classrooms follow me, and I would post these little pictures and like a paragraph or two every few days. I had this big Pelican type case with a like a laptop, like this big laptop, and but anyways, afterwards I was pretty low on cash, and a couple of the schools offered to bring me into their classes and pay me a couple $100 to do a presentation. And so I was like, sure. So I went and did presentations at a few of these schools, and the kids, like, I mean, they were asking me questions about things that I didn't even like remember happening. I mean, they just like soaked it up, like from
Yeah.
following along. And I was like, man, I'm on to something here. This is really working. And so then I teamed up with a friend who was a teacher, and he and I started the Wilderness Classroom. And then we paddled down the length of the Mississippi River, and then we did more dog sledding trips in northern Canada, and then we kept doing more and more and more longer trips, and getting more schools following along, and it just sort of slowly grew.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's really cool that it just grew from, I think the fact that you did this pre-Starlink to me is incredible. Like this was pre, internet wherever you go. So that's really cool. Um, what did the blog grow into a book? Is that kind of how, being an author came to be, or where did that come from?
So the 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 books. So basically, in 2010, between 2010 and 2013, Amy and I did a 3-year, 12,000-mile journey across North America by canoe, kayak, and dog sled.
Hmm.
And that was like the biggest wilderness classroom project that we've ever done. And that one, we had about 100,000 students following us,
Wow.
and we met directly with about 25,000 students through school assemblies. And so after we finished that, we came back to Ely, and we learned about some copper mines that were being proposed right on the edge of the Boundary Waters.
Mm,
And so we ended up teaming up with a nonprofit called Save the Boundary Waters, uh, and so in 2015 and 2016, we spent a whole year in the Boundary Waters without leaving. Um,
wow.
and and yeah, so basically 10 years ago right now, we were out in the wilderness. We'd been out for, I guess, about our first month. We started in September 23rd of 2015. And so we didn't leave the wilderness. We didn't cross the road. We didn't go in a building, didn't flip a light switch. We were just out in the wilderness the whole time. And um, through Save the Boundary Waters, we had a little satellite terminal. So we sort of used the skills that we developed through the wilderness classroom
Hmm.
of like communicating from remote locations, and taking photographs and writing and things like that. So basically, we were blogging, we were posting on social media, we were doing interviews. We had reporters come in and interview us. We had the Today Show paddled in and interviewed us. We were basically able to get a lot of attention for the Boundary Waters and how
Hmm.
special it is, and the threat of the copper mines.
Hmm.
And so after we finished that, we wrote our first book, which was called A Year in the Wilderness. And then after we finished that book, we started writing the a book about the North American Odyssey, which was that 3-year long journey. So
Hmm.
that that book just came out like a year ago. So it came out like 10 years after we finished that project. So
Hmm.
uh, yeah, so that's how the books came about. Um, uh, yeah, books are a lot of work, a lot of work.
I, yeah, I mean, talk me through that a little bit. Like, you go on this amazing adventure. I'm sure you take notes? Do you keep a journal? Is the blog your journal? Like, writing it almost 10 years later, how do you even remember? I mean, I'm sure there's some highlights that are obviously extremely memorable, but I'm sure there's some kind of almost mundane to you moments that are like, yeah, yeah, we just kept on hiking or kept on dog sledding. Like, yep.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so we we had a lot because Amy, for during our year in the wilderness and the North American Odyssey, Amy kept a journal.
Okay.
Really just like a personal journal. Like a lot of it was actually like on paper, like in binders.
Hmm.
And we were also like producing a lot of content that we were sharing with students. We were
Hmm.
sharing with the general public through social media. And so afterwards, really for both books, it was sort of going back through all of those and then picking out what it was that we wanted to include,
Hmm.
uh, and sort of rewriting it. So yeah, so even though like in some ways, I think the North American Odyssey, because a decade had passed, basically, um, that helped a little bit in some ways because it helped us sort of like some of the minutia maybe to like slough off so we could really
Sure.
focus on, because there was so much. I mean, how do you 3 years, how do
Yeah.
you like fill that into, so there, I mean, there was so much that we couldn't include, right?
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, we went through everything that we had written and all the photographs that we had, and those really sort of sparked the memories that we could then use
Yeah.
to write.
Yeah. That's awesome. Did you, I mean, I want to talk a little bit, not too much about like the process of getting published. Like, was that a challenge? Are you like, or was it pretty much like, yep, we wrote this book because we went on this incredible thing, or because of your first book, it was a little bit easier? Or what did that look like?
Yeah, so we got, well, I think we were sort of lucky. So we, our publisher for both books is called Milkweed Editions, and they're based in Minneapolis.
Mm.
And so um we, someone from Save the Boundary Waters had a connection with Milkweed,
Okay.
and so they helped us sort of pitch the idea of our book. And actually, Daniel, the head of Milkweed, he paddled into the Boundary Waters like a month before we finished our year, and we
Yeah.
basically inked our book deal on a campsite in the Boundary Waters.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was really cool because we, I mean, basically we shared some like sample writing and stuff, but they were like, "Yep, we're gonna do this." So we hadn't written the book, and they already agreed to publish it, which for a first time author is like pretty unusual. So
Right.
we got lucky because we had a really compelling story, I think.
Totally. Yeah.
We had writing samples and things like that, but yeah, and then that book did quite well. And so afterwards we went back to Milkweed and pitched the book about the North American Odyssey, and they agreed to
Hmm.
that. And so then we worked with them again. And yeah, they're really an amazing publisher. We feel so lucky that we've been able to work with them. They're really they're great to work with.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, like, I think for a new author, the
Hmm.
more common approach uh, is that you basically write the book,
Hmm.
and then you shop the manuscript around to find a publisher. And then once you've written a book and it's done well, then yeah, maybe you can pitch ideas and things like that. But in the beginning,
Hmm.
uh, you generally write it, and then you find a publisher afterwards.
Yeah. It sounds like you have essentially taken the course of doing something epic and then writing about it. You haven't necessarily done something epic with the intent of writing about it. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, no, not at all. Well, we hadn't thought about writing a book for the North American Odyssey at all. And I guess during a year in the wilderness, it was in the winter. So we went in September. It was probably January, February, sort of the short days, short cold season. I think that's really when we were like, huh, maybe we should start writing a book. So yeah, it definitely was not like we're doing this because we're going to write a book about it. The books were, yeah, sort of an afterthought. There was always a different reason, whether it was trying to raise awareness about protecting the boundary waters, or our work with the elementary and middle school kids. Those are really our primary focuses on these journeys, and the books were secondary.
Yeah. Let's talk for a second about your time splits like today, maybe this year, like now when you're thinking about your time, how much of it would you say is dedicated to like education for schools or I mean I guess if you're writing a new book, which I would love to learn about, or like guiding and stuff like that, like how do you split up your time these days?
Yeah, so for me, basically, I am full-time guiding all summer. So that's like sort of middle of May through the end of September. And then, and so, I mean, doing a little bit with the wilderness classroom, but don't have very much time, right? So
Mhm.
mostly just doing that. And then this time of year now, I have more time to work on wilderness classroom and I'm not guiding at all. So uh, the wilderness classroom still isn't like full time
Mhm.
during the winter, but I'm allowed to, I can spend more time working on it.
Yeah.
And then Amy works, uh, she's in Ely at Ely Outfitting Company all summer,
Hmm.
uh, May through early October, and then now she's working remotely, taking reservations and helping to manage the business
Okay.
uh, from here. And so she works about 30 hours a week,
Hmm.
all winter long, remotely from the boat doing that, and
Cool.
then can work a little bit on wilderness classroom as well, and
Hmm.
then also have some fun sailing and scuba diving and exploring and stuff.
Yeah. Is there anything about like wilderness classroom, or I guess anything that you expected to not like and you ended up really loving? Like, I guess I'm thinking about the the admin side of running a nonprofit. Like that's not a small task. Um, and I would say stereotypically people who are like to spend time in the wilderness are not loving the spreadsheet work of running a nonprofit. Is there anything about that that you loved that you're like, "Oh wow, I actually learned to really love this throughout the process of building it?"
Yeah, I think the thing that probably is a little surprising for me was sort of web development,
Hmm.
like sort of building and maintaining the Wilderness Classroom website. Um, that's something that I have enjoyed doing and learned a lot doing that. And it was just sort of like, well, we're small. I want to do this, but we don't have a budget to hire someone, so we'll just figure it out. So um, yeah, I'm not huge on grant writing or like some of the other things,
Yeah.
accounting and stuff like that. It's like those are things that you sort of have to do, but I don't enjoy very much.
Sure.
The website stuff that actually is something that I've grown to enjoy.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I didn't think I would like it or be good at it, but actually it's turned out okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool.
But
What?
yeah, I think like any job where there, no matter how like amazing something seems, there's all sorts of stuff that you have. That's why it's a job, because there's stuff that you have to do that you don't enjoy, right? Like even if a lot of the stuff you do enjoy, it's not going to work unless you do the stuff that you don't really want to do.
Yeah, yeah. I had a welding professor once tell me, he goes, 20% of your job is always going to be sweeping the floor. And I think he was talking specifically about actually welding, but I have definitely applied that to like my other jobs where I'm like, 20% of this I'm just not gonna like, and that's okay.
Yeah,
When it
yeah,
exceeds 20, then I'm kind of like, but just you go into it, 20% of it's always going to be sweeping the floors.
yeah. That's good advice, I think.
Yeah. What I assume that you guys have some younger guys that maybe have done the summer camp thing and then said, I want to do this full time. I would imagine at that point they kind of weed themselves out, right? Like if you do it for a summer camp and you hate being outside, you probably aren't going to try to do it for a career. But is there any traits that you see in those younger people where you're like, oh, you are gonna have a fulfilling career in this, or maybe on the opposite end of like, I think that maybe you should try to find something else, that this is maybe not for you. Any specific traits on either end of that?
Mm, I think I think you have to be very patient. You have to, in order to have it be something that you continue doing for a long time, I think you really have to find joy and satisfaction in um in the experience that somebody else is having,
Mm,
basically. Because um because you're doing the same thing over and over, like, so I think it can get boring maybe, right? if
Mm-hmm.
if you don't really like enjoy seeing somebody else seeing it for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Yeah.
I think you have to really enjoy that part of it
Mm-hmm.
for it to be like, just liking being outside is great, but I think if you don't find joy in someone else's experience, then probably over time you're gonna want to find something else. Like maybe you're gonna want to like uh you could be a wilderness ranger and like work for the Forest Service and like maintaining the wilderness or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're more solitary. You're out there just doing your thing. Um, and you don't always have to deal with other people and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think if you're going to be a good guide, you have to be good at engaging with other people and you have to enjoy that aspect of it. Otherwise, you're probably going to sort of like get burned out at it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really interesting point. When I was a little kid, my mom did catering. So we did a lot of weddings. And as a kid, I remember just being like, I mean, I was probably like 13 or 14 when she started letting me wash the dishes. And then 15, 16 started letting me serve and all that other kind of stuff. And I remember just getting so bored. And she was like, hey, listen up, kid. Like, yes, this is your 50th wedding this summer, but this is maybe the only time this person's ever going to get married. And it's probably the first time they've ever gotten married. So like the whole thing is for it to be special to them. I think I remember bringing out champagne to the bride and groom, and it wasn't in their champagne flutes. Like they had specific ones for them. And I was like, whatever, mom, like who cares? And she was like, hey, like this is something they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. You're going to forget it tomorrow. Do it the way
Yeah,
they told you to do it. And I was like, okay, point taken, understood. But I think
yeah.
similarly for you, like I'm sure a lot of people are like, how could the Boundary Waters ever get boring? You know, when you love it that much, it's like, how could it ever get boring? But it's really the satisfaction in sharing that with other people and seeing, you know, getting that almost vicarious feeling through them of like, oh yes, this is what it's like to see it the first time.
I think so. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Well, I think that there are probably, and I'd be curious to know if you've ever experienced like someone in corporate America expressing jealousy, like straight to you to be like, wow, your job is so cool. You get to like adventure and do all these fun things. Like, I guess first question is, does that ever happen? And second question would be like, what advice do you give to those people? Like, how do you tell them, like, hey, buddy, like, if you gave up your fancy apartment and nice car, like, you could do this too.
Yeah, I mean that's I mean, I don't usually tell people that, but that's everything we do involves choices, right?
Mhm.
And like for most people, you know, the thought of like going off and exploring for months at a time sounds really romantic, and it's amazing, but there's a lot of things that we've had to give up over time. Not as much anymore because we've been doing it so long. We've been able to slowly sort of like, like establish a home base and
Mhm.
these things. But for many years, I mean, we were basically just like living out of our backpacks, and we had a storage container where we stored stuff when we weren't using it. But so I think that's the biggest thing, is that at least in the beginning you have to be willing to just sort of be a dirtbag and just make it work however you need to. And then over time, either you're gonna figure out sort of a good balance, or you're gonna be like, well, this was fun. I did it for a few years and now I'm gonna go do something else,
Yeah.
which both ways are fine.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes people don't realize that, yeah, you probably can't have the big house and the fancy car and, sort of this like
Nomadic lifestyle.
nomadic lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
I think that with the age of social media, right? The age of TikTok and everything else, it has become easier to become an influencer, right? Like which I would argue part of your job is being an influencer. Like you are influencing kids to get outside, like in the best possible way. Do you see that this career path has kind of opened up because of that, where now people can much more easily do these excursions or, go on these experiences and share it with the world? And do you think that's a positive thing, or do you think it should be kind of gate kept a little bit more?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think that's true. It is becoming a new way for people to sort of do it.
Hmm.
Uh uh I think I think it can be a positive, and I think it can be just not that great, you know? I mean, I think there are some people that are doing it that are showing sort of how things really are and helping people understand how they could do these things too. And then I think there are other people where it's just sort of like this, it's almost like a fantasy world. Like it's
Right.
not, they're only showing you like little snippets, and it's not really what it's actually like, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and that I'm not as, I guess I don't really like that as much, but I think it can be done in a way that can be beneficial.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, my perspective as someone who has gone on just like a handful of these trips is that the hard part is the part that you think back on fondly. Like, oh my God, I can't believe we survived that portage. Like, oh my God, I can't believe we got lost and were able to find our way back, but then had to do, whatever it may be, like the in the moment part sucks, but then when you get through it, like it becomes the best story you tell because you had to suffer through it. And I think there is some fantasy world like of, oh, we paddled and then we saw this and then we went to bed and it was great. It's like, hey, guess what? Someone still has to do the dishes. Like that's the
Yeah.
worst part. Like you still have to do the dishes, you still have to dig a hole 200 feet away from, like, you still have to do all that stuff. The mosquitoes don't stop. You can't see that on video. Like, I think portraying that is a fine balance, right? You don't want to scare people so they don't want to go, but you also want them to know what they're getting into of like, hey, this is not a Mexico beach vacation.
Right, right. Yeah, that's true. And I think you're right. We do remember the more challenging times, right?
Mhm.
I like to call that type two fun. It
Yes.
wasn't fun while it was happening, but afterward you're like, wow, I can't believe we did that. So yeah, I mean that's what builds character, and that's what bonds you with your
Mhm.
traveling companions, and yeah, it leaves you more confident when you leave the wilderness. You know, that's the best part.
Absolutely. Yeah, I very much believe in like the type 2 fun of like doing a hard thing, knowing that you came out the other side, you survived, and like trying something then even a little bit harder because you're like, oh, well, I survived that, so like I can definitely do this. Um, I think that that's critical for young people, especially these days, of like, hey, go do something hard and go do something like physically hard, not necessarily like, mentally difficult. Although in the boundary waters, I think both are true. I was very lucky to have people who were much better at navigating than I was. And I was like, I'm gonna leave that to you. You tell me where to go. I'll get you there, but you're gonna tell me where to go. Yeah.
Well, slowly you can that's a skill you can learn, you know, it just takes
Yes.
practice.
Yes. I'm very lucky to live in a satellite day and age where they were like, oh, this is my GPS. I was like, great. Any advice that you would have to a young person that might want to do this, that is like, oh, I'm in the outdoors. And if you don't mind, this is going to take a couple more minutes, but like, how do you broach that conversation with parents? Like, I would imagine if I was 17 and I was like, Mom and Dad, I want to be a wilderness explorer. I want to be a guide for the rest of my life. They would have said, You're insane. Absolutely not. Pack your bags, go to college like I told you, and become an accountant or whatever it is. Go do that. How do you how did you have that conversation with your parents? And, is there any recommendations you might have for other people who are in that same situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think my parents were, I would say, supportive, but maybe a little concerned, you know. Like for at least in the beginning, you know,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
like, what? But I think, you know, I think that it's good to if you're passionate about something, you should try it, you know, and if you try it and it'll work out or it doesn't, but like you're better off to try and follow that passion that you have, even if it's leading you on a little bit of an uncertain path, than you are, doing something that you really don't want to do because it's sort of like
Safe.
the the safer thing. You
Yeah.
can always go and do that. You're not, it's not like you're like, you know, lighting a forest fire and shooting heroin and, like you're gonna do all these horrible things that are gonna be like, well, I tried this but now I'm a felon, so I'm not gonna be able to go and become an accountant or something. You're trying to lead people in the wilderness, like it may be the right thing for you to do. It may be something that you try and it doesn't work for you, but I would say just go for it um, because if you don't, chances are you may regret it later. And once you have, mortgage and big car payments and a family and all these other things, it's going to be a lot harder to extract yourself from those things to try something new. When you're young, you can try things and some of them are going to be great and some of them might not, but if it as long as it's not something that's going to hurt you or hurt other people, it's going to benefit society, I would say go for it, try it out.
Yeah.
And as far as how to do it, um like for wilderness guiding specifically, you know like camps or scouting, things like that are a great place to sort of gain some experience. Um, Also, just working at an outfitter. A lot of times, folks will work at an outfitter in the summer, maybe while they're going to school.
Hmm.
And that's a good way to gain experience. And if you show interest in guiding, maybe you can like guide some day trips or like do some things so you'll slowly gain some experience that way. That's another path that can lead into a guiding career. And then there are also like specific programs, like you can take like outdoor leadership programs
Hmm.
um, at community colleges or four-year colleges, that or through programs like Knowles or Outward Bound.
Yeah.
Those are new ways to gain experience as well.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. I mean, were you familiar with Northland College? I assume you were.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I am so sad. I'm
Me
so
too.
sad that Northland is closing like that. Yeah, really, really great school. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was a kid, I went to Camp Unalaya, which is in Wisconsin, and that was like my summer camp. And a couple of the counselors there, I remember went to Northland, and I was like, I think I want to do that. Like, that's really cool. My parents were like, sorry, we're paying for your school. You don't get to go there. But and then I, followed its trajectory years later and was super bummed to see that it closed because it seemed like it was such a great place, for anybody who's interested in this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a loss, but yeah, I mean the other thing is you can also study something else, and then um you don't necessarily have to study
Right.
your education or something. You can study something else and still try this as a summer job or something like that. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of paths, but I would encourage people to just try it. If it's something they're interested in, they should just start making phone calls, sending out your resume,
Hmm.
looking for a job. You probably won't be guiding, adults on week-long canoe trips to start out with,
Right.
but you can find other jobs that can help you build the skills to eventually do that if you want to.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what's next for you. Maybe you're going to start your own college, Dave. Maybe that's the next trajectory, the wilderness classroom grows into the next Northland College that sticks around forever.
Maybe so. You never know.
Yeah. What is there anything upcoming that people should be aware of? Any new books on the horizon, any YouTube series, anything like that that people should be on the lookout for?
No, not at the moment. We don't have a new book or anything like that. We're just sort of plugging along at the moment.
All right, I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I really feel like I struck gold emailing you guys and getting you as a guest. So I really appreciate it. Any parting words, any parting advice, anything that you want to share with people?
Uh, just just do what makes you happy.
Yeah,
That's the biggest thing.
yeah, awesome.